And then there's laughing itself, the mouth so open, a moment unplanned when you can tell just how tightly someone's wound. I had a favorite joke when I was little. I don't remember when I first heard it, but I remember the first time I told it. I was in the 4th grade, hanging out after school with 1 or 2 other kids, telling stories on an upper platform of the red play structure, high above the yard, the teachers, the younger kids. A woman goes to the doctor, I start. My voice then climbs up to approximate a woman's. Doctor, those hormone pills you're giving me are really just too strong. How can you tell? He asks. I have hair on my chest. How far down does it go? He asks. Down to my balls. And that's another thing I wanted to tell you about. I hope I can say that. Oh, good. Well,
you just did.
I just did. Whoops.
We're without a net.
Oh, good.
Cool.
So I'm pretty sure I got a good response from the kids for this joke. If nothing else, the word balls is always good for a laugh.
Apparently at any age.
At any age, it's always good. I remember how I felt telling this joke. Mature, like I had something on the other kids, some privileged information about what adult bodies are like. And naughty, like I knew something I wasn't supposed to know, some privileged information about what adult bodies are like. I don't actually think the joke is funny, but it makes me wonder what I was doing telling the joke, what kind of information I was trying to give these kids about me, about my body, without flashing anatomy or telling them something they didn't ask about or want to know. So
That's interesting.
So that was Intersex by Thea Hellman. Intersex, for lack of a better word, the winner in the transgender category for this year's Lambda Literary Awards.
Wow. You want to know what I find really amazing? Is that we have a category. It's like, how cool is this?
Well, one of the things you'd mentioned with the 2 truths and a lie about some of the worst criticism coming from within the community. I don't know if you heard of the fag bug.
I'm not sure.
The fag bug was a Volkswagen Beetle that this young woman, I forget what school she was going to, had. She had just bought a new Beetle, and she thought she'd get one of those long rainbow stickers to put across the back bumper because it looked cute.
Sure.
She came out of her apartment one day to go to class or to go to work. She had both that day, and somebody had spray painted words all over the car, and offensive words, something about fag and gay and go home, just nasty, nasty stuff. And she was initially really upset by it, and long story short, she couldn't get the dealer to take it off right away. They were backed up, and she ended up getting questions from people in her apartment building about what happened, and she found when she was talking to them, telling them they were outraged by it. She became outraged when she started driving the car to work because she couldn't get a replacement and right away. And restaurant owner had to ask her if she could kindly move her car because people inside were complaining about it.
Right.
And so she started getting outraged. And long story short, her friend convinced her to drive the car around the country for, I think she was going to do it for a month, and it turned into a year.
Wow.
Videotaping her trip along the way. And she now has her documentary about her experience.
Wow. And
it's called Fagbug. I think it's fagbug.com or org or something like that.
Very cool.
She showed part of it at True Colors. And the interesting part that she said, and she covered part of it in her presentation at True Colors, is that she found a lot of support from the general public as she drove around the country. However, she found a lot of criticism from fellow brothers and sisters in the GLBT queer community. That people were people were posting on websites to avoid it, that it wasn't a real protest, that it was a hoax, that she was just looking for attention, and she got a lot of negative reaction from within the community and a lot of support from outside of it.
Yeah.
And yeah, I think sometimes we
interesting,
we
isn't
draw our own lines too deeply.
Sure. Is she lesbian identified or
I think
straight identified?
I-
It would be interesting
think
if
she-
actually she were straight.
I think
and
she is a lesbian, but
was
I don't
doing
remember
this
for sure.
as
See,
an
I thought she
ally.
was straight, but I don't. But it's your story. I
Well,
thought I got it from you.
I
You
don't.
see, it would be very, I mean, it's a...
Oh, it would be.
If a straight ally were,
Right.
going forward that...
Because certainly no one would have known, looking at the car, whether the person driving it was straight or gay. They just knew it had a rainbow sticker on the
Right.
bumper.
Right. But, the presumption,
The presumption, yeah.
not only for, straight people, but, look at us.
Yeah.
Our presumption might be that, you'd have to be a lesbian to do that. Or it could be that thing called balls.
Yeah, exactly.
Interesting. Yeah.
The other one, the 10,000 Dresses, was also actually covered at True Colors. There's a, I don't remember her last name, you might. There was a doctor out in Rhode Island, a professor of early education studies at Rhode Island College, Elizabeth something, and I think it starts with a B that I can't remember. She's been doing a lot of research in the last several years into gay and lesbian literature that's appropriate for children should teachers want to incorporate it into their material. Not to teach GLBT stuff to kids, but
Yes.
because it's in the world, and as you're experiencing your literature and your learning, what you're learning should reflect the world you have to operate in.
Right. I do know the woman, and actually, she presented at the University of Rhode Island LGBT summit, or symposium, I'm sorry, this year, right after my presentation on bisexual erasure in the W House.
Right.
And that was, she went on and on about that book.
Yeah,
and
she
she
did.
did enumerate that now that there were several
Yeah.
titles in young adult, more in young adult. She also pointed out that there still is not a single
bisexual book for kids.
for children
Right.
or young adults. I mean, young adults might be arguable. I
Right.
mean, I know some gay books who, some gay authors who, are writing for, a less defined readership.
Right. And we talked about this the last time you were on, that there's a wide perception that if you cover gay and you cover straight, you automatically cover everybody in between. And it's
Right.
erroneous.
Right. And if you cover G and L, then that includes the B and T.
Right.
So, but what we're learning is really that, all of us are
They're separate.
tied together.
Yeah.
In terms of our political fortunes.
And so in terms of the political fortunes, but in terms of the identities, they are distinct. That's why they're separate letters.
Right.
You know.
Right, and each of those needs to be honored. I mean, here, I'm wearing my trans ally button, so which I got at Pride, and
Yeah.
I was sort of joking, before the show that whether or not I would feel like I compelled to explain that I'm not a trans person on your show.
Right.
Because people would tune in seeing the show and they'd look at me and say, "Oh my God, that is like the butchest dyke I've ever seen. She has been on testosterone for years now, I bet."
Well, and it's an interesting thing because you shouldn't have to explain it, but we all have a desire to actually have our identities recognized.
Right.
So it's not so much in defense of as, sort of in support of who you are. But yeah, you're not.
And that doesn't mean that we can't have multiple identities as
Right.
well. I
Yeah.
mean, I identify as gay, I identify as bi, I identify as bear,
Right.
I also answer to queer. Answers to, these descriptors.
Right.
So-
Too many letters. We got too many letters, and they're adding more all the time.
Well, I think I'm not sure. I think we've got